to our Departmental today. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Elida Dakoli, and she will be, hopefully you had a chance to research her background that was sent to you through your email, and if any questions come up during the presentation, feel free to write them in that discussion thread as well. So we will have about half of the session will be the presentation, and the rest will be Q&A so that you can ask any questions. And we're very excited to welcome Dr. Dakoli. Thank you for coming today.
Imagine jumping out of a skydiving plane and your parachute doesn't open up. What memories would flash in front of you? Now imagine that this parachute is a country that people have lost their hope of this parachute ever opening up. The country that I'm talking is Albania, the country that I was born in. Albania is a small country located between Eastern and Western Europe. It's surrounded by its own countries, I would say, by Kosovo, Macedonia, Greece, and Montenegro. In the years 200 before Christ, starting that time, Albania went through many wars. One to be the worst ever against communism. In 1944, Albania became the People's Communist Republic. And it was that way for about 50 years. My family suffered quite a bit during communism in Albania. My paternal grandfather, was a successful businessman. Once the communists came, his wealth was taken. He was put in jail. Our homes were destroyed, and my grandmother was thrown in the street with her children, 4 children. One of them, my father. They were all raised without a father. Later on, my grandfather was killed in jail. By my mother's side, my great-grandfather was a successful attorney, mayor of my city, congressman, actually the founder of the Albanian First Congress, and very known in charity. He was killed while walking with his son, my grandfather, in the street. At that time, it was written that the enemy of people was killed in this street. And we were not allowed to mention his name or have his picture in the wall at our house. Once the communism fell down, went away, disappeared, hopefully for good, that street bears his name. Growing up was very hard. When I was 6, I was admitted at the School of Music, which was the only school, the only place that you could study music in Albania. There were no private studios, for the simple reason that there was not allowed private property. Pianos at home were not allowed. I was not allowed to have a piano at home and practice. So you all have it very easy, whether you believe it or not. By the first grade, I was given a paper keyboard to practice at home every day. And that's what happened. By the second grade, I was supposed to study piano in the morning at 6 a.m. Cars were not allowed either, as they were called private properties. So with that in mind, my father had a bicycle, and every morning, summer, winter, rainy, windy day, I would get in that bike and go to school, practice at 6 a.m. By the third grade, the place opened up, and I started practicing piano early in the evening. Well, the problem was that there were not many classrooms available and not many pianos available, and those were in pretty bad shape anyway. So students would take their light bulbs with them, so the next student's not able to come and practice. I remember my father carrying always 1 or 2 light bulbs with him at all times. Well, so we were prepared. One time, I remember in the 3rd grade, I was studying for a competition, and my mother came to the room and started telling me that I had to be very well prepared. I had to be the best, because if I was not the best with my family's bad biography, I'd have no future in my life. And all I had to dream for would not happen. So I tried the best to work really hard. even though I wondered why at this age, at 8, 9 years old, I have to think of my future. I remember many conversations with my parents would have with our friends, did not want me to study piano because with my family biography, it was impossible for me to be accepted at university. It was just one university in Albania, and every year 4 or 5 students were accepted, and my options were very, very slim. Well, thankfully, by the time that I grew up to attend university, communism went down. I was accepted at the University of Music in Albania and studied there for 4 years. Once that I graduated, I started working in that university as an assistant professor. I started teaching piano classes. Well, I was 21 years old, and at that point I thought to myself, what am I going to do for the next 50 years of my life, or 60 years, just teach in this university? Seemed like a long time, and I thought I'll be very bored. With that in mind, I decided to apply in different foundations, non-profit organizations for some grants for further education. And I got a few grants, and also Austrian Embassy sponsored my trip to Vienna for workshop. There, a piano professor named Krasimira Jordan that teaches at Baylor University heard me and asked if I wanted to study my master's with her. And of course, I was thrilled, and I accepted. I came to the United States, but honestly, I didn't know where I was coming. America, as we see in movies, it's beautiful. Waco, it's a beautiful town, however, not what I imagined. So I did the best out of it, though. I learned, I worked very hard, and it was a shocking culture shock at the beginning, but I survived. I made it happen. Once that I graduated from Baylor, I'd say 3 important things happened in my career, in my life. One of those was finding a managing company. I graduated, and as most of us know, university gives you a lot of education. It makes you smarter, however, it does not prepare you from life. So once that I graduated from Baylor, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea who to contact because I didn't have many contacts in the United States. I was in America only for 2 years, and during that time I just studied. So I applied at a couple of managing companies, and I looked for a manager that would support the young artists that as myself. And I actually found one in New York called Prestige Classical. Joanna Stefan, I still remember her advice today. She, I'd say in a certain way, she changed my life. She was the one that recommended that I connect to a managing company, to a brand, so to a piano brand. Of course, Steinway, the pianos we have here, it has its artist roster. However, she suggested for me something different. Why not become a Baldwin artist? So Baldwin can give me much more than a Steinway artist could give me, becoming a Steinway artist. And we connected with Steinway, with Baldwin. However, Baldwin was going through changes at that time. Gibson Guitars was buying Baldwin, and their business strategy was changing. Their pianos were no longer going to be made in the United States, handmade, but they moved their factory in China. While talking about this with a friend of mine that owns a piano store here in Dallas, Texas, Piano Gallery, he recommended that I connect with Mason & Hemp because seems like the company that would be a good fit for me for what I wanted. And that's what we did. We called the rep, and he connected with the leadership. They heard me perform. They talked with me, and that's how I became a Mason & Hemp artist. A friend of mine took a few pictures of me while performing in the Mason & Hamlin, and we placed them on Facebook. A couple of months later, I received a phone call from the VP of Mason. Actually, it was an email from the VP of Mason. It was an email, a Facebook message, and I think a phone call as well. They covered everything to make sure that I would get that information right away, where they wanted me to have a photo shoot, Blu-ray, DVD, and CD recording with them, and they were coming up with a new technology where if you are familiar with Mason and Hamlin pianos as well, their sister company, Pianist, there is a device placed in the piano. You place the CD in it, and the piano starts playing by itself, the pedals start moving. At that time, I was the first one that they applied the new technology, where it connects to the iPad, and connects with the iPad as well as TVs around the house, or the area. And they came up with the idea, IQ iPad, smart and pretty. I was thrilled. It was a great experience working with them. And this led me to my second, I'd call it best experience, because or connecting with the brand, because at this point I had my Blu-ray DVD, I had my CDs in United States, and I also had my name. During this time, I was also attending my doctorate in piano performance at Louisiana State University. I actually took a few classes here at UNT. One of the concerts that I had in New York with through my managing company at Merkin Concert Hall, I remember at that time I was at UNT, so it was a 2-piano concert and 2-piano performance, and I invited doctoral student from UNT. So actually our rehearsed concert, if I can call it that way, was here in this stage, in this Pianist. While doing my doctoral studies at UNT, at LSU, while doing my doctoral studies there, I had 2 children, and I was traveling quite a bit. I still kept a house in Dallas, and I rented a home in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I had 2 cars, 1 car here and 1 car in Louisiana, and I traveled every week. On top of that, I traveled for performances as well. So it's safe to say that I traveled several times a week, flew several times a week. I was very tired at that point. But if you can take one thing from my speech today, is to look for the uniqueness in you. With this in mind, to search something that you can give to this world, even though very little, to keep in mind that you will make a difference. Whether you think that you might or not, you will make the difference. Even if it's for one person, it will happen. Looking for something unique, I decided for my dissertation to have my final dissertation at LSU to include and talk and educate the American students and audience about the Albanian music, Albanian composers, as much as I could. So I decided to talk about an Albanian composer, well-known in Albania during communism and after, named Aleksander Peci. Aleksander Peci was able, if you have read about Shostakovich's life, was able to survive the communists, composing music, expressing himself in a certain way that was under their standards. However, he had that little possibility to still express himself. So once that communism went down, he went and studied much more, and now he's quite successful in Europe. So with this book in mind, it turned out to be a pretty pleasant dissertation theme, and my professor actually recommended strongly that I turn it into a book. During all this time, this was my idea as well. And this leads me to the last point of my speech today. That while I had this book, I had the 3rd child. I graduated. I had the 3rd child, and I decided to apply with publishing companies. I applied with 3 of them. I wanted a publishing company that was able to connect the history during communism, the history of music during communism, as well as accept a non-fiction book with research, because I did quite a bit of research in analyzing the music and of this composer and the Albanian music. And right when we sent the email, I got a response right away that they were very interested. And I've always thought the first offer is the best offer. I might be wrong, but I've always gone with this. And of course, they sent me a contract. We discussed a few things in the contract, and I agreed that to go with this company. They connected me with Victims of Communism organization in the United States. While I went, Victims of Communism actually invited me for a speech in DC in June of 2017. Last June, invited me for a speech last June, and of course I went there with pleasure. It was a very successful and very good experience. However, before that, I gave a very honest interview with Voice of America. And that interview was televised in 40 countries. There I spoke about the struggles of my country, that people were still afraid to talk about what communism did to them and to them, their families, and what they're still suffering from all those. And they're still afraid to talk, and the wounds are still open to them. This, without my understanding, or without my thinking, I would say, this became, in Albania, it became a big deal interview. Actually, a law was, people started talking, people started expressing more their feelings, and this led to a new law in parliament where people, that the parliament was, at this point, they started, requested a fund from the government to look for, as my grandfather was, died many years ago, we did not know where his remains were, where his grave was. So a fund was provided. I would say I got an email that last July, about a couple of months ago. In July, a fund was provided that they're going to start researching for the remainings of the people that died during communism, and their families don't know where their bodies are buried. Of course, to me, it means so much because at least for my father and grandfather, for my father and my uncles, and also for me, at least we have a place where I can go and cry my grandfather, at least meet him. Now, imagine that this parachute opens up that we talked before. Has all this experience changed anything in your life? Would it change anything in you? I know that I have a lot to do, I have a lot to give, I have a lot to learn, but if my work, my ethics, and what I believe makes a change and influences people, then I think that I've reached my goal, or I've done something to change this world. Everything starts with an idea, a dream. It's your duty to make it reality. Live every day as it's your last day. Don't believe in yourself and follow your dreams. Don't give up, but always look for uniqueness in you. You all have something unique to give. Any questions?
Thank you.
Any questions? I hope you could all hear me.
When you first were in contact with me in Hamlin, you said you went through like an interview process with them. What kind of questions they asked you and what kind of responses did you get? Just kind of get an idea of like.
It's been quite a long time. I think the main was that point was that from this conversation that I had with my friend at the piano gallery, they were carrying Mason and Hamlin. So when we contacted the rep, they kind of knew that I was someone that I was trusted and they had heard me before. So they didn't ask me any questions. They listened to me, to my performance. I really can't remember much what we discussed at that point because I talked to their rep for about half an hour, and honestly, I can't remember very well. But once that I just general, how are you doing? Where have you performed? You know, how do you feel about these pianos? Tell us a little bit. I remember that they wanted a quote from me right away. What do you think? Tell me something about our piano that makes it unique, that you want to be our artist. I remember this. And yeah, that was it. A couple of days later, I received an email from them, happy to accept me in their artist roster.
Can you tell us a little bit of what were the things you had as far as materials to show to them? Did you have a website back then, or did you have CD, like any type of professional materials that you may have developed up until that point that you think helped you show them? Of course, the introduction from the previous person was helpful, but in addition to that, what were the things that you had prepared or that you had, you know, in your portfolio up until that point?
I had a manager.
Okay.
So I'd assume, thinking back, that my manager also connected with them as well. And I had a website through my managing company. So those were the main things that I had. And I had performed at Piano Gallery. I'd given concerts. I'm not sure if they saw any links of me online. So listened to something else or heard about my performances. There were a few articles, I believe, starting at Baylor, Albanian Learning U.S. Ways.
Wow.
And I think I had a few other articles and performances they might have searched online, but the only thing that I gave them was my performance they had through my managing company, my website, and yeah, that was it, and a conversation. Yes?
Aleksander, what kind of experiences, either in your personal or professional career, really helped you realize what unique thing was you had to offer?
So, you have to go with the flow at the beginning. When I came out of, when I graduated from Baylor, I had no idea what to do. I remember that I wanted to stay and experience America still, so I did not want to go back. And I actually remember that I applied for a few jobs, and I got a job in Dallas. I remember I got a job in San Francisco. I was talking of going to New York, but for some reason I felt that I wanted to stay in Dallas. And at that point, I remember coming to Dallas, I didn't know anyone, not one single person. So you start looking for things that interest you. I had a manager that was in New York, and that was the only thing that I connected with. I connected with people. However, I think you find your uniqueness in what you do, in your passion, your upbringing. For me, I'd say that connecting with the victims of communism was the best thing, because it's something that I can give a lot. I can give through my performance. I can give through my my speaking. I can give through my books, through my life story, through my family story. So this is for me unique, and if I can make a change, that would be it. So as you grow, you find your uniqueness. However, you have to try. You have to try many things. But if you know, maybe you know what I didn't back then. Once that I graduated from Baylor, I had no idea. But if you know, then good for you.
Thank you.
Look for it. Yes.
I think a lot of us feel like management falls from the sky. Like we'll just perform somewhere and someone's just going to pick us up and be our manager. How did you go about getting a manager? Did it just fall from the sky, or did you actively search?
I searched. I remember I spent a few days searching for a manager, and the portfolio that I sent to my managing company was very, very, very well prepared. I prepared it myself. I sent it to my piano professor. I sent it to another professor. I remember I sent it to someone that was working at the Baylor HR office. I opened the door and I told them, can you take a look at this? Tell me if you see something that you might not like. And so I went through a lot just to send that portfolio, because I knew that that was the start. They opened that folder and they start reading about me, and it was my duty to make it possible for them to open the second page or just shut the folder down.
So what did that portfolio look like?
oof, it's been a long time.
Sure.
But,
Or what are some guidelines that you would say as we prepare our own portfolios?
well, my bio, it should not be very long, but it should be put together well enough where we can show who we are as artists, what we are interested in, what interests we have as well. I had a few pictures of me. I remember I had a repertoire, basically pieces that I performed that I had ready for them anytime. I remember this one that I wrote, anytime that you need to perform, I can perform this repertoire within 2 or 3 days notice. Solo, chamber. And I think a few posters from past concerts that I had in the United States. Of course, I sent a CD with work, a classical work, a contemporary work, and Spanish music. So this was it.
How many management companies did you send to?
I don't remember sending too many, not very many. But what I had to search for the one that was my fit. You know, it was a good fit for me because they accept young artists. And I thought that was it. And the same thing with the book. I did the research. I mean, there are so many publishing companies, but I did the research to find what is the best fit for me. I don't like being rejected, I guess. I do the work myself. So yeah. Any other question? Yes?
When would you recommend we stop just like studying music and actually try to get into the business?
Oh my goodness, that's a very good question. So, you don't stop studying music, ever. I still study music. As I speak here today, I'm teaching at Dallas Baptist University, and I have 64 pieces to practice and accompany. So you never stop studying music. You always look for what's new and what's coming. But to think back, and I had this conversation with you. I knew that I had to do something different since I was in high school. I remember I did this concert, once that I started college, I did this concert in Albania where I invited some artists from my city, Durrës, and from the capital city, Tirana. I made a gathering. It was kind of a Christmas concert where we had an actor. I still remember it was a great experience for me. I had an actor on the other side. I had a guitar player. I had a trio, piano, violin, and cello that I performed in it. What else? Was a ballerina in it. Yes, and they all, I opened it up. I remember with Brahms, a Rhapsody. I opened it up, then the guitar took over, then the actor started, actually I had two actors. The actor started I don't remember what he had, but I had to avoid the girl, so they started, and then meanwhile, once that all this, the ballerina came in and started dancing, and then the piano went back, so we changed, it moved and it floated very nicely. It was quite a successful concert. So always look for something different. Always look for something different. Don't just try to have a concert with a trio, because there are so many people. Here's another concert, here's another performance. One thing that I didn't tell you that my manager recommended to me a long time ago, and maybe I should have taken her advice. She suggested that being European, I should start performing more American music of years 70s and 80s. She recommended that I perform a lot of Gershwin, and I did not feel that I wanted to do that. And I remember she was very strong that she would recommend that. But I didn't follow her advice. Yes, please?
Can you talk more about your research on your book? How do you feel about doing that? Was it straightforward? Did you get to dig for a lot of stuff?
To do the research for my book?
Yeah, your dissertation, I guess.
It was my dissertation, yes. I did quite a bit of research. I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but you learn as you go. You learn more as you go, and you put more material together as you start reading more materials. I talked to the composer twice. Went to Albania. I talked to the composer because I taught in university. Once that I graduated, I had many colleagues of mine that still remembered me. I was surprised, and through friends, I was able to get their email addresses, and then we talked on the phone, and they gave me so much advice, or I would say, talk to me so much about the composer, talk to me so much about music that this composer did, and talk to me so much about this composer's personality. As I also connected with artists that performed quite a bit during communism, and it's very, very fascinating. The book turned out to be very interesting. I mean, just one aspect that it's very bizarre. Artists were not allowed to move their hands up, and I will explain everything. I've explained everything in detail into that book, but they were not allowed to move their hands up because these were called revisionist moves. Capitalists it was their influence in us that we should not obey. So hands should not be very up, and many artists were persecuted, literally taken off their work for the simple reason that once they hit a very heavy chord, their hands went up, and that was very bad because they were kind of dancing on stage. Or they were not allowed to wear long dresses for a performance, but below their knee. So I remember my piano professor sent me an email saying that the first time that she wore a long dress was in 1986 for her performance. So it took me quite a bit of time. I think I did a research for about a year and a half before.
Can you tell us more about how you balance now your advocacy efforts and the things you've done in terms of, I think you mentioned you have been able to donate pianos in Albania or something like that. It's very interesting to share that, the impact you're making now through your advocacy.
I've been very fortunate in life because even though I've worked very hard, I feel like I've gained quite a bit. I've been surrounded by wonderful people, by wonderful guidance, and wonderful friends as well. So one day I received this phone call from my piano professor in Albania that I owe her so much. And she asked me if I can help her find a used piano for the Academy of Science there. For you that don't know, Academy of Science in Europe, it's a very important institution. That's where the books are published and keeps a connection with the science, with the music. It's quite an important institution in Europe. In America, I don't think we have one, Academy of Science. So she said that they've been trying for many years to find a piano, a decent piano, because of government rules. Several pianos had to come in the country and then they could make offers and choose one. However, this was not possible. So the only way was that someone can donate a very used piano. I told them that I will check, I will see. They asked me if I could connect with Mason and Hamlin. I talked to my husband that I've been very fortunate to marry my best friend. So I told him, what should we do, John? Should we buy a piano and donate it to them, send it to them, or connect with Mason? And he told me, why don't you talk to your friends here in Dallas and see what you guys can do? And that's what I did. I connected back to Piano Gallery in Dallas. I went back there and I told Bob, what can we do to donate a used piano in Albania? I said they want us to, they invited us actually to go and be part of the inauguration. And because their building was being restored and everything, and the new stage was being built, he said, Elida, we should make this happen, but I don't want to give them a used piano. Let's plan on a brand new piano, and that's what we did. I told them that yes, we'll provide a new piano. They couldn't believe it. I'm like, it's okay, it's not a big deal. But I mean, to them, it was a huge deal, and that's what happened. Once that I went to Albania, of course I had concert there, but because of my speech that I had before for the Voice of America that was televised in 40 countries, the many the ministers and the parliament, they were aware of me. They knew that I was going, so they're requesting meetings with me. So my presence there made quite a big of, on the media, made a lot of noise. So I think we started the concert season, but to answer back to your question, you have to do what you feel that it's right to do, and if you feel that donating a piano and to someone that needs it and the possibilities because of the rules of the government, it's impossible. Why not make it possible? Why not make something? One thing that I've learned in life is try to give as much as you can without expecting back, and it's gonna happen to you. It will come back to you.
That's very nice. That's very nice. Any other questions? How do you balance everything you do now? Can you walk us through? We've heard a lot about your story and your past, and
I don't.
I know, right? That's everyone's issue. But walk us now to, like, you're a mother of 3. You're a faculty member at Dallas Baptist University. You continue to concertize. You're doing all this work with your, book and advocacy. Walk us through, like, how you're able to manage all these different things. Did I forget something?
I have a music school.
You have a music school. Oh, yes, definitely. Talk to us about your music school. We haven't mentioned that yet. And it's not in the links you sent us. I was realizing this either.
Okay.
So,
it's part of the Elida Dakoli link.
Right.
There. Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that, because that's also another aspect of a business that you've created, and that would be very interesting for our students to know how you were able to put that. It's called the Dallas Institute of
Musical Advancement, yes. So how do I manage all of that? I take it hour by hour.
Tell us about DIMA. Tell us about DIMA first, because we haven't really talked about that. So talk to us about that, and then we'll talk about how you manage everything. Because there's still more layers to you that they don't know.
DIMA, it was an idea. Again, I wanted to open a music school. I saw a gap that I felt that students here in the United States, in Dallas, because parents are so eager for their children to learn how to play a piece, so they don't learn the foundation of music, which is music history and music theory. So I decided to have a music school that kids can actually learn the instrument. We teach piano, cello, violin, guitar, and voice. A student can learn the instrument and also start learning music history and music theory. And for me, that's very important. So with this in mind, we decided to not have a building, a proper building to give the lessons, but teachers go to students' homes for the simple reason that parents are so busy these days. Having 3 children, I can completely understand that it's just so hard to take them from one place to another. With Dallas, traffic is just unbelievably difficult. So teachers will go to their homes, and at the same time, we decided to partner with one of the best private schools in DFW area, the Lamplighter School, where we teach into their nightlife program. Nightlife program is where the students, we give semi-private lessons from 3:45 to 4:45 to our students, and there are 2 students in the class, and they study music together, study the instruments together. This was what I wanted to do with my music school, and this is my goal. So that the students not only study piano, the instrument, and learn how to play notes, and the teacher tells them, play this note, play this note, play this note, but learn have the whole music experience.
And so you've had that school for how long?
I've had that school for, officially, especially because we had to prepare everything, the papers with paperwork with Lamplighter. It started in, I'd say in April 2000 and April of last year.
Okay.
So,
Is it an LLC or
it is an LLC.
LLC. Okay. A lot of students here are trying to create their own schools as well, and trying to learn about how to put all of that together. So that's also very interesting too.
I have a lot of projects about the school. They're a work in progress, so I'd not like to, a couple of people here that I see know about them pretty much, but I'd not like to talk about it now, maybe someday in the future, but if they go in the right direction, I think the school will be very, very successful. So we'll see. We'll see. It's a work in progress. And to answer your other question, how I manage it all. I have someone wonderful that helps me, even though right now she's very busy, so I have and I'm very thankful for her, Carson.
Yay!
But yes. Then, yeah, I'm surrounded by wonderful people. I have my husband. It's been a great support throughout all this time. And, you just have to manage everything smart. Sometimes you don't have time to send everything during the daytime, during the working hours. Don't worry, at midnight you can send several emails that you... So I work a lot at nighttime. Once my kids go to sleep, I do work quite a bit at that time. And of course, tell you the truth about practicing, I have 2 pianists at home. One concert grand and a 7-foot, and I just can't practice, so I go to my mother-in-law and practice there because it's more quiet there. So you just have to make it happen one way or another.
Right.
As you know.
Right. Any other questions? So finding the time to work on your existing projects while planning for future projects, how would you recommend for students who are very much on the day in and day out, just grind every day and having to just complete their academic, assignments and perhaps graduate school auditions or auditions for jobs? How would you recommend they go about having that time to work on the small, immediate tasks versus the long-range future goals? How have you been able to manage that? How would you recommend they go about that? Because there are so many things that seem to require immediate attention right now in their lives that it's hard sometimes to really project into the future and decide, long-term goals and these big questions like what sets me apart and what's my differentiator? What recommendations would you have for them, especially knowing that they're really busy right now and it's not really going to get any easier once they graduate?
It doesn't. It gets busier and busier.
Yeah.
I have done it while I was in school. While I did my doctorate, I traveled. Like I said, I would come here in Dallas on Mondays. I would fly to Louisiana on Mondays and come back to Dallas on Thursdays. My managers, they would always, most of the time, book my flights from Dallas because with my crazy schedule, they're like, we're booking you from Dallas and that's it. So sometimes I remember I had to fly to Dallas and then catch another plane and go somewhere else. How do you manage it all? Again, you take it 1 hour at a time, honestly. So for example, at this point of my life, it's easier because I have a better support team than I used to have back then when I was a student. But for you, I'd recommend that connect to a friend, connect to someone that you trust that has the same ideas as you. Make it happen together. You don't have to do it all on your own. Build a teamwork. It's an experience. Something that you might think that is the right thing, your friend thinks that it's not, and maybe you should go in a different direction. And when you both discuss together, something better comes. So if you both, for example, manage it together, it might be easier. On the other side, I'd say schedule your things that you have to do right away, the classes, and once that is over, think or prepare what's in the future. Even now, I don't try to do things like right away, today for tomorrow, because I know that it's impossible. So I always like to give myself a little bit of time, about 3 to 5 days or a week. For example, if I have to send an email that it takes me a long time to prepare, I would tell them, person that I'm sending the email, please expect an email from me in the next 5 days with a project that I'm working on or something, a proposition that I have. And usually people are pretty understanding.
That's very interesting, yes, because the urge in the emails to just not see them as unread anymore and just take care of one thing after the next can lead to lesser quality responses and thought process. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Have any of you thought about responding in that way to any emails of projects or things to just make it clear to the other party that there will be some time in between? Have any of you sent those emails? An email like that? Yes? Yes?
We should.
It's okay for people to wait for you. It is okay. And as long as you communicate that so they know you're just not leaving me hanging, but actually, you're taking it seriously, but you're giving yourself that time. And then also from a stress management perspective, that helps a lot.
Absolutely, it's
Because
very
you don't
important.
feel the pressure to have to do things because you already notified the other party that there will be some time, and that's okay.
It's okay, and again, I work with Carson quite a bit, and many times, and I appreciate this about her, many times I send her a task, and she says, I received your email, or usually we talk through Messenger on Facebook, I received your message, right now I'm in class, or right now I'm working, I'll be free after 4 p.m., or I'll be free tomorrow. Do you have, can this wait till then? So there is something that even if you are very busy, just let people know, let the person that you are communicating know that at this moment you cannot respond to that email the way that you want to. So give yourself a little bit of time. Nothing ends. The world doesn't end.
Right, right.
Yes.
When you perform in Europe, how are the audiences different than Americans?
Oh, that's a very good question. How is the audience different?
Like
Well,
you just performed in Europe this summer, and how was your experience compared to when you play here?
when I play here, well, to begin with, when I perform in Europe, I see more people that I know. Here, even though there are people that send me messages, where are you performing next, what's going on, keep us posted. It's a different atmosphere. I'm waiting to perform, and people come in the green room, and they start hugging and start talking, and it's a very different experience. But when you go on stage, you see the faces that you know, the faces that have been there throughout your life, and I feel the love. I feel the love very much so, and that makes me want to do better, to perform more, and to also do better wherever I am, to represent my country the best. Well, I have dual citizenship, so I'm not saying my country the best, but one of my countries the best possible way. But one thing that I noticed, though, during my performance that I did not like is that people can be a little bit louder in Europe than they can be here. Like they don't stop talking. It's amazing.
I also have one more question. So a lot of Americans are not familiar with Aleksander Peci's music, and so how do we find access to his music, and or is it accessible through different mediums? How do we locate it? Is it YouTube or Spotify?
YouTube, there is a lot of his music on YouTube. WorldCat, if you go on WorldCat, there are many libraries, thousands of libraries that have his music. He has written actually music for all ages, so starting at for children, first grade till very professional, extremely difficult sonatas and concertos and symphonies. So he's written quite a variety. Some are very abstract, but beautiful music. He has had some great ideas. He has involved math into the music at a certain way that it took me quite a bit to analyze his music. Even once that I talked with him, I didn't understand what he was talking about, so I had to spend hours and hours and hours and read his music, I'd say note by note, to figure it out. But it's beautiful. And would
you call it more avant-garde, like chants music, or?
I think he was, once the communism went down, he went to study in France, in Paris. But I think he was inspired by Peci quite a bit, even though he doesn't, he says no, I could see his influence there. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Dakoli. This
My
has been
pleasure.
wonderful. Thank you very much.